So, Wienke, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's great to have you here, and I look forward to learning more about LoRaWAN for industrial IoT, and I'm sure our audience also will be looking forward to learning more about it. So, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Kudzai.
Awesome. So maybe can we start off by introducing yourself and your company?
Yeah, sure. My name is Wienke Giezeman, CEO and co-founder of the Things Industries and the Things Network. We founded the company, Johan and I, in 2015, and with the vision that the IoT market is very much systems integrator and developer driven. And we've been on a journey from going through the hype of IoT, LP1, and now emerging as one of the leaders in the enterprise low power IoT segment.
Awesome. Yeah, I must say you've really done some incredible work in the LoRaWAN space. I've been watching you for a long time, for many years. So I really commend the work that you've been doing so far.
Thank you.
So yeah, today we're going to kind of like talk about industrial IoT, the application of LoRaWAN industrial IoT, because most of our audience are really in that space. Now, to get started, for those in the audience who might not be familiar with LoRaWAN, or perhaps they just need a refresher, can you give us an introduction to LoRaWAN and also tell us about the Things stack and where it fits into that whole picture?
Perfect. Yeah, definitely. So LoRaWAN is a network protocol, and it's used on the LoRa radio frequency layer. And it was created in 2015, and it was created by an alliance called LoRa Alliance, and we're an active contributor to the standard for 7 years. And what it does basically, it allows you to send some bits and bytes from a sensor over a long distance, taking a very little power to a network and then to an application in the cloud. The general architecture is that you have the sensors. They typically send small messages every hour. That's a bit of kind of the bandwidth and kind of the application area where you have to think at. So like small messages, the mousetrap is full, the valve is open or closed, the temperature is X, the CO2 levels are too high. These kind of very binary kind of messages, they are really, really good for the LoRaWAN technology. Then the range is pretty significant. So you see it is much more than Wi-Fi. And if you use it outdoor, which is also possible, then the ranges can even go into the kilometers. So that makes it, for instance, very interesting for smart metering. What you then see, it's a protocol that's highly centralized. So the network management runs in the cloud. And after that, it actually, the LoRaWAN network server, which is the centralized network management, which is kind of the core of our product. It's called the Things stack, then integrates with all kinds of applications. But the entire part kind of up to the centralized LoRaWAN network server, that entire part is non-IP for the data payload. And after that, kind of, you typically use webhooks to forward the data to enterprise applications or anything that you want to do with the data. Applications are very diverse, from CO2 sensors in schools to mining companies that use it for predictive maintenance. We see it in agriculture for cow tracking. So yeah, there's a lot kind of different applications, and that's very exciting. On our platform now, hosts around 1.5 million devices connected constantly, and we kind of help our customers kind of run that network management at a very cost-effective way, and in a way it's none of their issue anymore, and they can focus on their applications. So that is in a nutshell kind of what is LoRaWAN and how do we fit in there.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, I mean, you've touched on quite a lot of areas here that I would want us also to kind of like go deep into to unpack all of that. Now, when it comes to the application of LoRaWAN in industrial IoT, so we've kind of like talked about some smart metering. What are some of the more common industrial applications that you see benefiting from the capabilities of LoRaWAN? And do you perhaps have any case studies that you could share?
Yeah, sure. So, for instance, in industrial, we have mining companies that put vibration sensors on the conveyor belts to see if there's any anomalies or anything kind of out of the ordinary. We have customers that do that in engine rooms of large ships. Industrial in oil and gas, for instance, simply monitoring if the valve is open or closed. People detection, people counting. We see it happening in logistics, so internal supply chain. So with LoRaWAN, you build your own network, you set up the gateways, and if you just put a gateway, which are fairly low cost, into every location that you have as an enterprise, then you can kind of have a bit of this kind of long range NFC kind of applications. So that's where you see in logistics. In agriculture, it's mostly pest control, so smart mousetrap, rat traps. There are even termite detection LoRaWAN devices, and also soil moisture and kind of cattle management with even air tags that run on a solar panel. And then if you move to smart city, then you have a lot of kind of also microclimate and more kind of citizens kind of well-being and comfort smart city solutions, but also utility companies that use it for smart metering. And the interesting thing is that if you use, for instance, a LoRaWAN network for smart water metering, where we're, for instance, helping our customer in the UK connection with, is that we help with that when you build such a network directly, kind of if you have the network there for smart metering, you can use it and you can use that taxpayer investment basically for all kinds of other use cases as well. So then if you kind of move more into the buildings and retail and offices, that's kind of very, very fast growing segment. So energy metering, sub-metering, occupancy of desks, occupancy of meeting rooms, also CO2, air quality. We even have kind of sort of these panels where you partners that made these panels where you kind of see who booked a room, for instance. A lot of stuff there. And then in retail, so we have a lot of kind of few of the largest supermarkets in the world as customers, and for them the business cases are very, very, very big. For instance, if you look at food compliancy, food safety, but also of course kind of a big portion of our food is wasted during distribution. Doing that more efficiently. So the big joy and kind of the privilege that we have as IoT founders is that we're being amazed by a kind of cool new solution literally every kind of week. And this week I came across this amazing company from the US that created a vape and bully detector. I mean, who could think of that? And they can put that in high school toilets, and it can detect bullying through kind of through sound, and it can detect if somebody's vaping, which we kind of probably kind of this is something that would we all want, I guess. Anybody has kids or whatever that you want to have that safety in the school. And so, I mean, literally every week we see something else, and they basically they use the same platform. And yeah, we feel kind of honored that we can help all these different applications and share a bit of that joy of all these inventions that make this IoT market so awesome.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I guess that's the power of building a compelling platform, right? You get all sorts of applications that you didn't even think were possible or didn't even conceive of, right? So yeah, that's interesting to hear. So, I mean, our audience here is typically made up of industrial IoT solution architects and developers. So to kind of paint a picture for us, can you describe a typical architecture of LoRaWAN solution for industrial IoT applications and highlighting some key components that are involved?
Yeah, so typically in industrial kind of site visits, I mean, I'm not an industrial IoT expert. Let's just kind of foresee it. So I look at it from a kind of quite an outside view. But what I see is that the component LoRaWAN and the long range and the low power is basically what it do. It can do kind of inspection work or kind of non-critical work. It can do that because the kind of network infrastructure goes outside of the kind of closed areas, but the sensors can go within. That also means that sensors that you use have to be certified to the kind of security levels and the rules that go for electronic devices in these industrial sites. But what I think it's really interesting is that it like LoRaWAN is not for critical infrastructure. So a little example, like we would not allow our customers or kind of we would not allow our customers to make a smoke detector with it to detect fire, for instance. But what we do have is customers that detect the battery level of the smoke detector, right? So and in industrial, you have a lot of these kind of inspection processes or yeah, a lot of kind of metrics where it is very convenient if you have them remotely. In an industrial setting, you should not use it for any critical control or any critical measurements where you can make very critical decisions on. But in a lot of times, there's a lot of kind of business cases out there which don't require critical kind of communication infrastructure, and then it's kind of at the fraction of a cost. I mean, kind of the moment you're gonna do critical infrastructure, you're not gonna use wireless probably anyhow. So the comparison with kind of wired sensors and these kind of things, and the cost of putting that out there in an industrial site is of course kind of like a few sensors of a few $100 is nothing compared to the cost of pulling cables. So you see that in kind of like we have customers in oil and gas, we have customers in petrochemical, like more the kind of and also in kind of like the pharmacy kind of area, and they all revolve really a lot around condition monitoring, status kind of monitoring of valves, and in maritime, which is kind of like close to industrial, you see the same. And there's also where we help customers with a global version of LoRaWAN and LoRa that operates at 2.4 gigahertz. So that's also an emerging standard. So yeah, there's kind of a lot, but think about non-critical telecoms infrastructure for monitoring basically anything you like. And the beauty of it with LoRaWAN is there's a large ecosystem of sensor makers. So for instance, if you look at oil and gas, a company that is doing great is TWTG, a global operating company that's highly specialized in industrial sensors, but also a company like Aloxi that's doing that. And now, I mean, if you would kind of looked around at Hannover Messe, you see that company like Pepperl and Fuchs and Honeywell are also coming with highly kind of ATEX certified devices. So yeah, it's that you have the fast moving companies that innovate fast, and then you have the kind of the more traditional industrial companies that are following as well. So yeah, it's really showing how this how LoRaWAN is entering the industrial space.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so I think you mentioned like the that LoRa is more suited for non-critical industrial applications, more like monitoring. Yeah. So I'm kind of like curious to find out as far as the resolution is concerned, time resolution is concerned, what do you see out there, or what do you put out as a key consideration for anyone who's building like a LoRaWAN's wireless sensor network? What sort of time resolution should they be looking at? And also, are there other factors to consider to say what is the distance that they should best work with, or how many nodes should they work with? Are there any key considerations there?
Yeah. So if you look at kind of the technology by itself, and if you would run it in a lab in a very safe environment, you can stretch it very far. So we have created a test where we sent a message over 332 kilometers with a weather balloon, even kind of cheating the curvature of the Earth. So this is not representative for the technology, right? So if you talk about indoor, it's just kind of saying something about kind of the far boundaries. So you should be at least within 20% of that. So if you would do it outdoor, kind of don't stretch it further than kind of a kilometer or something. You can stretch it to 10 kilometers, but you kind of make kind of that will highly impact the margin for error you have in your application. And usually, although it's not kind of mission critical, just having your messages arrive 80% of the time doesn't still kind of like that doesn't work. So then around battery lifetime, so it depends on kind of the distance that you want to reach, but in the battery lifetime, that can be the biggest cost driver. So the battery lifetime can be if you want to go for long distance and send a lot of data, then maybe your sensor will last for half a year. If you want to stretch it and kind of like send small pieces of data, literally valve is open or closed, or kind of like that kind of stuff, then and you make sure that you have a good network, and you can last for 4 years. And now with the new upcoming kind of fast moving companies into the kind of like the smaller sensor solar panel space, we're going to stretch that until 10 years. So that's going to be super, super exciting. And specifically within kind of industrial setting, we would always advise our customers kind of yes, this is the circle of technical possibilities, but like stay in the part where you have all this margin for error, because in the end, if you're a systems integrator and SI that goes into this industrial space, you're gonna typically have a mitigation line on the entire project of somewhere between 15 and 25%. You want to keep that, right? So and you need to buy that margin by making sure that you don't overpromise in your SLA. So we always advise kind of like, if customers ask us, okay, what's the maximum distance I can go? We always say, like, this is the wrong question, right? It is a broader considerations. Like if you're trying to stretch the technology, like you're on a wrong path, right? It's a tool. Like it's nothing more than a tool. It's a tool to create a bit pipe between your sensor and your application and your ERP and your digital transformation, anything that you're doing there. Like if they say, okay, how can we stretch the battery lifetime? So like that's not the right question, right? Like make sure that you design your SLA in a way that all the kind of expectations are managed properly, and that you can keep your promise, right? And typically when we've saw the hype of the IoT for 7 years, typically this is where kind of a lot of disappointment in the IoT industry originates, in that kind of like a kind of a systematic overpromise, underdeliver kind of world. And now is the time to kind of climb out of that, and it starts by underpromise and overdeliver.
Oh, nice, interesting. Yeah, I mean, so a lot of industrial IoT scenarios would require you to integrate data from a LoRaWAN network into things like SCADA, or maybe if we've got like an IoT platform. So, for example, I've worked with some companies where they've cement manufacturing, where you've got some sites that are geographically a bit further from the control station. Then you need to use a wireless sensor network to bring that data back into the control station and then visualize that information. And so what I want to kind of like get a sense of from you is, which is the best integration point if you need to integrate data from sensors, LoRaWAN sensors into a SCADA environment? Is it at the gateway, or does that data need to go to the cloud first and then back to your SCADA system? What is the best practice around there, or what do you see?
Yeah, so a SCADA probably is designed with a lot more data traveling. So I can typically, if you say SCADA, I would say this is not a signaling protocol. So for small messages or something like that. So I mean, from the get-go, I would say don't do it. But for instance, if it's Modbus, which is more for signaling, more for smaller kind of pieces of data, there's more of a kind of link there. So if you look at the kind of LoRaWAN end-to-end, I wouldn't connect the SCADA, but what you see is, for instance, if people install an industrial computer that connects to a SCADA, which then probably uses MQTT to connect it to a centralized data source or kind of centralized kind of messaging platform, then if you install that industrial PC, why don't you add a LoRaWAN gateway functionality to it, right? So because you already kind of have that, and then kind of you already have the kind of integration. You're always been through the security measures to make sure that your site securely talks to the cloud. You already have the on-site DevOps. You already have kind of all this kind of you have this very kind of large total cost of ownership for industrial digitization. Adding LoRaWAN to that is actually then a very good idea, because it goes at a very kind of marginal cost, while it can kind of like it might help you a lot. Yeah, I wouldn't kind of connect a SCADA system typically, and if you do it, just kind of maybe use it for kind of very simple kind of summaries, or kind of maybe you can detect some patterns, and then if you can translate it to kind of like simple yes nos or simple telemetry, then at a certain threshold, then use it. But yeah, this is not where it was made for. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So maybe just to kind of like linger on that a bit. So you mentioned that you could have a situation where if you've got an industrial PC, you're running a LoRaWAN gateway on that PC. How does the gateway expose, in case there's some applications that need to consume that data on that same PC or maybe on the same network? How does the gateway expose that information for consumption? What options are there?
Yeah. So the gateway forwards the LoRaWAN message directly to the cloud, where the network server is. We offer a possibility to run the network server on premise, but the level of DevOps maturity that the industrial, or kind of sometimes we get the questions from retail as well, you have to have a very high DevOps maturity for on-premise digitization. So what we always advise is say, kind of like, okay, you want to have the data locally. Then we can say, okay, what's the maturity level of, like, do you have a proper kind of Kubernetes? What's your FTE count for a site? And then we get a bit of an idea, because we don't want to kind of lead our customers down a way that they basically they're aware of the fact that you have to have a mature DevOps capability to do the network management on the edge. And and typically, if you want to scale that across sites, that gets really hard. Our hypothesis is that in the end, everything will go to the cloud, or that you will have edge service at the kind of same yeah, that really like Amazon Greengrass or Azure IoT Edge that really have these cloud capabilities and cloud maturities kind of extended into the edge. But typically, if you want to consume that data locally, it's going to become very custom and very maintenance heavy.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Yeah, I think we're going to talk about cloud integration in a short while. For now, I want us to kind of like focus on the issue of security. So as you are very well aware, security is a big concern, not only for industrial IoT, but for other sectors as well. So can you talk to us about how LoRaWAN ensures the safe transmission of sensitive data?
Yeah. So the exposure is on different levels. So if you would do a kind of a security analysis, you look at the sensors, that's LoRaWAN. So there I have end-to-end encryption with a S128. It doesn't use TCP/IP, it doesn't use TLS end-to-end. So you can't use certificates or kind of handshakes. Your bandwidth is not there. So you're using root keys. So typically we advise to use either a hardware secure element or a software secure element to store the root keys. And you can run a private joint server, which stores the root keys in your own HSM if you like to. And then you have all kinds of flavors of having it managed or not. So that's kind of the LoRaWAN message going over the top, right? Then you have the gateway that is through TCP/IP and TLS connected to the LoRaWAN network server. So there you kind of have the connection with your DevOps that you have already in place. So your kind of DevOps needs to make sure that there's a secure pipe between the gateway. It's completely kind of sandboxed and kind of it's an IP device, so you should treat it with a level of distrust, like any IP device you have on your site, and then it has a TLS HTTPS connection to the cloud, and after that, it's kind of like it goes over in the DevOps security that you have in place for your cloud. So these are the specifics. So and then you can make several decisions on how to do that. Kind of like, for instance, some gateway, like LoRaWAN gateway vendors have their own security mechanisms. But it is not anything else than basically a computer or an industrial computer that you put in. And the kind of the security for the LoRaWAN that's all in the protocol itself.
Awesome. So so as you know, I work for Hive MQ, and we offer like this MQTT platform, and a lot of times we kind of like get a lot of customers who are thinking about having a LoRaWAN network, and also kind of like thinking about how they can integrate that with an existing MQTT network. What kind of interactions are possible between LoRaWAN and MQTT network infrastructure, and what are the touch points?
Yeah, so the touch points, because the touch points are after the LoRaWAN network server, you have the application server, and our application server supports MQTT. Typically, because it's kind of the nature of MQTT is that it's always an active session, right? There's a connection where you stream data over. LoRaWANs are chirps. They are kind of bursts. They are more like web requests than they're about streaming data. So it's a burst, it's a chirp, and typically what we see is that our customers use webhooks because it's just more kind of with regards to kind of network. It's more alike. We have customers that use MQTT, but it's quite resource intensive for very, very small messages that only probably we have customers that send not more than 2 messages a day. Right? Like you don't want to like if you would keep open an MQTT client to wait for these messages, that's not a good architecture. But if you maybe send a kind of a message every 15 minutes, it could make sense. And sometimes just you're forced to do it as an integration kind of requirement. So really that's where it is. But I think also like it's like LoRaWAN is not streaming data. It's for non-critical infrastructure, and these are chirps that arrive kind of 95% of the time. So MQTT is not really a good marriage there.
Okay, perfect. So moving on to integration, enterprise integration of LoRaWAN networks. So, I mean, the primary goal for a lot of industrial IoT companies is to kind of like integrate data from their operations technologies, so whether it's oil and gas, into their enterprise infrastructure. Can you tell us about enterprise and cloud integration capabilities of LoRaWAN or the thing stack?
Yeah, so that's the majority kind of the devices. So these are kind of offices like this. I'm here in a kind of small workspace, and you put a occupancy sensor in there, you know, if it's kind of occupied or not. If you look at, for instance, in what's driving a lot of kind of interest is ESG data, sub-metering, over-the-top measuring of all kinds of data points. We see we have partners that do thermostats in kind of buildings, hotels. If you look at the retail space, a lot of we have a customer that's doing security products all across the world and monitoring the movement, and these are kind of these security dongles that you see that's using in, for instance, kind of phone stores or these kind of things where your product is connected to a cable, and they do all kinds of stuff with that data. So kind of in buildings, enterprise, retail, facility management kind of use cases. Yeah, they are very, very popular, and these business cases are very, very strong as well. So yes, we have some great partners that have all kinds of office and retail and facility management use cases.
Okay, awesome. So now, if you have collected your data coming as chips from sensors and then into the things stack, now you've got a database infrastructure or some other enterprise applications that you have, and you want to integrate that data. So I think you spoke about the ability to use webhooks. What other integration capabilities do you have there? Do you have like native connectors also to different database systems or applications?
Yeah, so we have native connections to Azure IoT and AWS IoT, and this allows you to kind of fully manage your devices from AWS IoT and from Azure IoT. So this gives you some convenience. What we see is where our customers are successful when the stack is simplified. So kind of this, like there's a correlation what we see between simplified stacks and success. So the ones that are most successful that do a simple webhook into an existing ERP process that they already digitize, and the IoT data gives this kind of additional amplifier to the already kind of digital transformation. That's where it really, really, really goes well, and where kind of the value creation is very kind of clear and fast, and it's strong. So there is a lot of you can do a lot. You can do any IoT platform, but the kind of like for me, like for instance, if your application's endpoint is a visualization, for me that's always a really big red flag, because a visualization is always very expensive because it is made for a human, and humans are expensive, and they will only get more expensive. Like a typical DevOps kind of a maintenance engineer, kind of you're starting with $100 an hour at least from an enterprise value or enterprise cost level. So visualization is always very, very expensive. So that should never be the endpoint. It should always be a digitized business process. And if you have that, and you have this kind of full circle automation, then things are like becoming very, very interesting and scalable. So yeah, I mean, we're agnostic, right? We can, you can create any dashboard, or you can use any IoT platform you like with and connect it to our network management software. But the simpler, the better is really how we get out of the IoT hype.
Oh, okay. So when it comes to, just to kind of like link on that a bit also, when it comes to integration mechanism, do you have like an event-based kind of like integration firing? Because I would imagine that's one of also the things that would be critical also to kind of like close the loop as far as automation is concerned, right? So
yeah, that depends. Yeah, that depends. That's really kind of, if MQTT works for you, MQTT. Like we're agnostic. I'm just only kind of like my take here was only that I wanted to kind of share some best practices. And we see that kind of the simple webhook ways is great. And if you can use the webhook to directly send it to your digitized kind of processes in your ERP or in your industrial automation platform or whatever platform you like, then then that's perfect. But yeah, we support all, and the most kind of resource consumption effective is the webhook. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Now to kind of close this session off, if you look ahead, what are some of the emerging trends or features in the LoRaWAN space that IoT solution architects or developers should be looking out for?
Yeah, if you want to hear all about it, then you should come to our user conference. So we do a big conference every year in September. This year, 21st and 22nd of September in Amsterdam. It's a great place, still nice weather in September. And basically, that's where we kind of like set the agenda forward with all our partners in the LoRaWAN ecosystem. I can already say is that there's interesting stuff happening in LoRaWAN to space satellite gateways. I can say that I'm really, really excited about the emergence of solar panels for enterprise IoT sensors, both inside and outside. We're going to talk a lot about that with some really cool partners that we are presenting their ideas. And extending the longevity of these devices, but also basically making sure that these the sensors don't become e-waste after 1 or 2 years. I'm also excited about some new security mechanisms that we're including, and kind of things around data sovereignty and root key management. That's very exciting. And we have a lot of kind of vendors that are going to announce new products, which I cannot talk about yet. But you will see quite some new products hitting the market and being launched there. So, so that's at 21st and 22nd of September in Amsterdam, 2023. And I'll make sure that in the kind of, I'll give you a discount code for everybody that listens to your podcast.
Oh, that sounds interesting, and we'll certainly appreciate the discount code. I personally looking forward to attending this year for the first time. So I saw your a cool video that you did actually introducing this year's Things conference. So that was really nice to see. So
thank you very much.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So I mean, to close this off, do you have anything more to add to this?
No, I think you're kind of thanks for having me. Thanks for all these great questions. It gave me the opportunity to kind of explain a lot. And I also think that what's great for people listening is that IoT has gone through a massive hype, and what you kind of, I think what you should be looking for now in IoT vendors is kind of like, how do they pursue this operational excellence and product leadership, and how do you kind of like be wary of all the hyping that's still going around. And yeah, we see it with our 1.5 million connected devices that it's coming. Like it's really becoming a reality. It's not only these castles in the sky, which and the big promises, and the future for IoT is very bright.
Awesome. That's great to hear, especially coming from you. So thank you again, Wienke, for taking the time to come through this show and join us and share your insights. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.